But the ideas of like taking risks on something like that and bringing in maybe this guy that doesn't make so much sense, and but it will in the future. And I was so thankful for that. And getting on to like what would I tell people is you're gonna have to work. Like you're going to have to put in tons of hours. This isn't a movie either.
Hey guys, thanks for coming back for another episode of the Perks and Paving. As always, I'm joined by Mark, my husband, and today we have locked in another special guest. We have Jesse Woods here from TPG's office on the media side. Thanks for joining us. Absolutely.
I'm excited to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah. We were thinking about, obviously over the course of the evolvement of our episodes here on the Perks and Paving, we've thought about the company, and we've realized that we're truly blessed that we are able to have people that come together from, have different backgrounds and experiences and perspectives, but we all come together for one common goal. So we thought that you would be a great addition to have on the podcast to kind of talk about, your unique background and
Absolutely.
What brought you here to TPG.
Yeah. No, it's an honor.
Perfect.
So, where are you from originally? Are you from the local Pittsburgh area?
Give us like the background back to the days of Jesse Woods.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm from Pittsburgh, North Hills, actually, Ross Township area. Born and raised here, and the only time I actually ever ventured out in, to the world beyond Pittsburgh actually was beginning of this year. Actually, when kind of get a little bit into our story here is. I returned from Texas. I actually went to Texas all of last year.
Okay.
And I kind of just took a gamble on myself to go, explore, the workspace. And I went to go partner up with somebody out there and for doing the work that I do. And we could get into that. But it just didn't pan out how I really wanted it to. So I just came back home and I was like, I'll pick up where I left off. And immediately within coming back here, I met Vinny, and obviously it progressed. But it was cool because we met at a sneaker convention early in the year. Nice. And that was like the first time I really a part of me coming back, I really wanted to focus on the idea of getting myself more out there and showing the world what I have to offer, because I spent many years in honing in on that craft. Yeah. So now it's about, now it's time to step out of the the laboratory, per se. Yeah. And that's what ended up, leading me to here. I had met Vinny at that sneaker convention, and we ended up getting the studio together downtown.
Right, I was going to say, you guys rented that space.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Okay. And, I was super fortunate and grateful. I actually had told him, I was like, I after that sneaker event, like nothing he did, just I'm in a space where I have so many promises. It's 99.5% of them fail. So I don't expect anything. And I said, I wasn't expecting to never hear from you again. Like maybe like a what's up or a follow.
Yeah, just like friends or something.
Yeah, but never. When he opened the studio up to me and called me about it and asked me, I was like, seriously? I couldn't believe I was actually hearing about it. And that has nothing to do with Vinny's character, strictly just that I've had people promise me the world.
Right.
And I in return give them as much as I have to offer, but it just never pans out that way,
So I want to get more into you and your sneaker business, but bring us through the evolution of were you always doing sneakers, or did you do something before sneakers? Mm-hmm. And bring us through kind of the
share with the audience what you do to the sneakers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, because that's an important component.
So I'll just give a brief rundown. So I obviously you go through high school, and you kind of have I was always told that I was on a good path. I excelled in places that I gave interest, and it was actually engineering and architecture was my first passion and love, and I wanted to be an architect. Unfortunately, it's really expensive, and I don't come from money like that at all. And you also have to be out of the state. So I started off in that, and that was my goal. That's when I spent all my time in high school. I gave it all my attention. I excelled pretty well in there. There are kids that are engineers now that graduated in my class, and you know, I was right there with them. If not,
Yeah.
you know, we were battling for who was like kind of leading the class and that
That's awesome.
stuff. And that's where I gave a lot of my attention. It was double block, so I had 2 hours. I can, you know, give all of my focus. Every other class was just a struggle for me. The way, you know, whether it be the teacher just doesn't inspire you or captivate you. It was hard for me in those classroom settings. So I'd get down into this, you know, it was in the workshop of our school, and you know, we were building stuff like, you know, we built cardboard boats that like we actually swam in the pools, and cardboard cars, and I made a cardboard fully functioning pinball machine.
Okay.
That, you know,
That's cool.
it's just, you know, weird stuff, but I really love that. That was my first passion, and you know, I grew up drawing and painting and being creative. I worked a lot with my hands in the house and whatnot, building stuff around the house, pools, ponds, additions, and stuff. So I liked working with my hands. I liked being creative and being able to flex that creative, you know, way I see things. So that was always fun. But as things progress, you know, you get out of high school, and then you know you start taking the traditional route, what you're kind of told. And what's actually really interesting, if you guys tune into the Brian Hess show this morning, we actually talk about goals, whether they're yours, whether they're put on to you, are they your goals? Like, and they
someone
weren't my
else's?
goals.
Yeah.
They just weren't. So I went the traditional route, went to college. I ended up graduating from La Roche University, right out here.
Mark was just commenting like a couple days ago how beautiful that
Yeah,
campus was
yeah,
when we were
yeah,
driving
yeah.
by. So
Absolutely, yeah, and that's it was a great school. It's so small.
Yeah.
I mean, I had classes with like 8 kids in it. You know what I mean? Like so it was like a really small. It was an intimate environment because my track was.
and you liked that though?
Yes, I actually did, because I went to CCAC out of the gate for financial reasons, and you know I was able to get good grants through that, and that was great. And then after CCAC, I tried Slippery Rock, and Slippery Rock was a bigger school, and you know it's just one of those dime a dozen schools. Essentially, nothing on them. It just I wasn't getting what I needed out of it.
Yeah.
I you know, my degrees jumped around. I went from, you know, psychology was actually what I first got into.
what I
I
started.
wanted to be a psychologist. And that just, you know, I just kind of thought to myself, do I really want to be, you know, I'm a bit empathetic. So do I really want to embody problems all day? And I think it's a great role to have, but I think to be a good psychologist, you have to be able to turn that off and not be able to
Absolutely.
Take it home
internalize
with
people's
you.
problems. And I
Absolutely.
think that's huge. I don't know if I could separate myself from work, and you know, it's almost weird because it's such an intimate space and environment, but you have to almost be robotic with it and turn it off.
Yeah.
So that was something that I was concerned about, you know, having my life be like that for the rest of it. So, yeah, I you know, did the traditional route, like I said, and ended up getting a quote unquote big boy job, you know, go working at
So did you graduate with a degree in psychology then, or did you change?
Yeah, so actually, what was so great about it is I actually had my papers filed to leave. I was actually about to drop out, and
Okay.
I was 3/4 of the way through. I just couldn't take it
Yeah.
anymore. And not necessarily that I was going to be a quitter, and I know that's technically what I would have been if I would have did that. But what happened was, you know, calculus started creeping around, and you had to get those classes done.
hard.
And I was like, dude, I
That
haven't.
is
Yeah, I was like,
hard.
I haven't taken math in like, because you know, if you don't take those classes right away as soon as you get into college, you can, you know, put that off for years. So
I ran into a similar
Yeah, yeah.
situation, and then I tried taking it online, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, how hard could it be? It was really hard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was just tough because, you know, you spend so much time away from it. And I basically told myself, like, the amount of time that it was going to take for me to learn and put all of that attention and energy, I said, I'm at this point now where I'm just going to put that energy and attention to something that I really believe in, my actual dreams. And I, you know, did everything that I was supposed to do up to this point, and it just wasn't working out. And if the people around me at that time, which was just really just my parents, you know, if they really cared about me, they would understand that, like, this isn't going to work. I'm going to be miserable. But yeah, so I ended up graduating because I took my papers to the dean, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And you know, she was actually really sweet about it and was like, listen, like, you know, you got a lot of stuff going on for you. Like, and she was very nice about it, which it felt good to hear that, because, you know, you hear from like maybe your parents or something, you're like, okay, of course, you're baby boys, so you know,
Yeah.
you know, all
Of course
that.
you're
So,
gonna understand, right?
yeah, yeah. So I had went to her and she was like, listen, there's this degree. It's called interdisciplinary studies. You have all of these courses that you took that could be replacing your electives. So calculus was an elective for me at that time. And I had pivoted from the psychology to marketing. So my degree ended up being in interdisciplinary studies, but it's the combination of 3 bachelor degrees, and it's psychology, management, and marketing. So essentially, I'm a bachelor level in all 3 of those
Very
fields,
cool.
which is very interesting. And when I heard about this, I was like, why are we not telling people?
Right.
So, like,
Yeah.
why is this not a thing? I'm not the only kid that's like going through this. So
Right.
why is this not a thing? I've never used any of the math past like 5th grade math. You know,
Right.
you don't
Right.
you don't use long-term division, like especially in today's day and age. Like we have our phones. So, you know, I was fortunate that she offered me that, and when that happened, I was like, okay, we're gonna you know, I'll finish it out. I graduated, it took 5 years instead of 4. So it wasn't like, you know, I'm a late bloomer to a lot of things. So I kind of just took that as like, this makes sense for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, but yeah, and then take on the jobs, and I just took a gamble on myself, and I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then things progress, and I get into my shoes. So
Yeah.
that's when things really started to pick up.
So obviously you graduate with your interdisciplinary degree. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a
Tongue
it's a
twister.
mouthful. It's a mouthful.
So you graduate with that, and you're still not really sure what you want to do with your bachelor's at that point, and then that's when you kind of pivot and get into your shoes, correct?
Yeah. So I go. Well, I you know, get my degree. I go and, you know, get a job. I'm at UPMC downtown, and
Okay.
like, you know, doing some. I was a pharmaceutical representative, so like basically it's
Nice.
just a long
Do you
big
like-
word for no.
did you like
no,
that?
no, no,
No?
no, 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 I did not. It was because it sounds like a fun title, but really what it was is I was just handling problems that, you know, if a patient came in and there was a medication issue, meaning like they maybe refilled too often or too soon, or the last refilling they did. It was just all a bunch of like basically nurses, doctors, and pharmacies would call and be like, hey, why is this not going through the insurance? And, you know, I would solve this problem, and it was incredibly miserable. And right before there, I was actually at, you know, a bank, you know, Citizens Bank, and, you know, tried that as well too. And these jobs just, it was like school all over again. In this closed environment, I have to, you know, be a certain way, which I don't mind, but it just wasn't me, you know. And not that I would say I am so polar opposite of being business professional. It's just the environments you have to put on this, like, you know, facade that it's like, is this really me? Is this really what I want to be putting all my energy into? So I ended up leaving to go be a tailor, actually, for alterations and tailoring. And I was basically an apprentice there, and I was going to start becoming a you know, full-time tailor. And that's actually a really good job for some people. I mean, some of them make up to $50 an hour, and everything's just time-based. So you're timed on like pants 10 minutes, shirt 5 minutes, like, and some of these, and they make commissions there too, which is crazy. So yeah, what ended up happening was while I was there, I was working on my shoes at the time, and I ended up having a baseball player reach out to me and was like, I really like this. And he ended up just being like, what do you get paid? He's like, all right, we'll just do that. Like, I'll just, you know, I'll help out with that. You know what I mean? So he's like, that's nothing. So, you know, I was very fortunate for it, and that kind of what spurred a lot of things. So it was fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, did you have anyone with like creative backgrounds in your family, like any artists or anything? Like what was, I know some, like my cousin, I don't think anyone else in our family is artistic. She is very talented, and she was just blessed in that department. And was that kind of similar with you, or did you have someone to kind of guide you down that path?
Yeah. So my dad, he's actually he was a graphic designer for Dick's Sporting Goods for like 16 years, or maybe even 20. It was a long time, but they made a lot of cutbacks. So he unfortunately was a part of that. Because they're moving a lot of things into digital, and he was actually doing a lot of the advertisements you would get in the mail or you'd pick them up at the store, and that's just kind of a dying art right now. But he was a graphic designer, previously just an artist before, really good with those things. He's very detail oriented. I learned that from a young age. I remember there would be times I was a kid where I'd draw something and my dad would be like, well, that shading's a little bit off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but it was really beneficial because, it was a constructive criticism, and he wasn't hard on me about it. Like, but
Just
it
trying
was
to make
just
you
something
better.
exactly. And because he's an artist, and I relate to this as well now that I'm a creative, basically full time. You just see things, and you're just like, I want you to be better, so I'm going to just tell you like what I'm seeing in it, and that ended up, that's kind of what made me, I feel like, be so articulate and detail oriented, especially with what I do now, because it's very detail oriented. And my mother, she's very outgoing, so there was a bit of like, so my dad's very, like I said, meticulous and like very fine details, and my mother was very outgoing. So their dynamics, I feel like I'm able to, and some of my favorite pieces are very loud, but also articulate in the design and able to have the fine details. And I think that that's very vital in being able to be flexible like that. So I could take on the simple detail projects, or I could take on something very outgoing. And that's what a lot of my work was before I met the baseball players.
What inspired with the shoes? Like, where did that idea come from, or what inspired that?
Yeah. So what happened with that is, like I said, I was like doing the painting and stuff early on, and really took I like to merge psychology, business, and creativity all in one thing because they all play roles with each other. And basically, I saw the canvas space, I saw the painting, all of this stuff. It was so oversaturated. And then you look at graphic design, and it's like I also have I played sports and I love sports a lot. There's a bit of a competition in me as well too. It's like, okay, well, you guys are all doing this, I'm going to do something else.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it better and find my own way. So once I kind of saw that space was a bit oversaturated, I had tried to pivot into the shoes, because it was starting to come up at that time, the painting, and that was a thing. And so it just started off in levels. So high school, it was like just keeping shoes, like I would buy them off of kids at school, like, and they'd be like, they didn't even realize what they had. And, I didn't really have money to go buy new shoes. So we'd always like thrift or buy like, the outlet store shoes and stuff. So I'd keep them clean. And that then got me into eBay. So I was buying and reselling shoes on eBay. And as I was doing that, you start getting shoes that are a little bit chipped up or they're dirty. You clean them up, do a little paint on them as a restoration, and then you just put it back on the site, and you can sell stuff for double profit. And late high school, early college, I was like, all right, this is fun.
Yeah.
And then the next step was I had a hole in a shoe, and I bought a sewing awl, and that's just a hand sewing tool, and I stitched up the hole on it, and I was like, and like again, it's like, and then bringing in the engineering to things where like this stuff really wasn't out there at this time, or at least it wasn't in my radar. But I started thinking to myself, okay, like how can I make this work with designs and go into it deeper? Because it may seem easy when I'm doing it now, like I could just show you the process, but to process how to stitch something inside of a shoe was just like, I spent so much time just like trying to imagine it.
Yeah.
I mean, you even think about how a sewing machine works. I don't think a lot of people understand that it's a needle going through, and when the needle comes back up, there's a loop,
Right.
and that other thread is getting pushed through. A lot of people don't really see that.
Right.
You just, you see it,
do its
threading.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I had to, it took me so long to figure out how to, work this hand stitching tool. And once I did that, I started doing this, I called it my Frankenstein stitching, where I would, it was very rough and artistic. And this is when I was still like in my like artist phase, where I would do these like very outgoing with like loud colors and furs and these crazy designs. And I was just hand sewing them all together. And that was when the baseball player, he saw I had an old Gucci bag, and I thought designer stuff was a cop out for artists at this time. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. You're just riding the coattails of a designer brand. And I ended up just doing one just for fun because I had it laying around, and he really liked that. And he was like, I got guys on my team that paid $2,000 for this. And I was like, okay, that's like
maybe I'm gonna change my
10x.
mind.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like 10x of like what my most, I think my most expensive job I ever did that was painted was like $150,
Okay.
And even looking back at it now, it's like I could have charged way more. But it's, because
As you're building a brand, though,
Yeah.
you probably want to take it
Absolutely.
easy, like get your clientele built up,
Yep.
and then once you become more well known and
Yep, yep.
established, then you change your prices to
Yeah,
bring
and
in the big bucks, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I took that approach with a lot of things. I'm a long term thinker. I've, struggled per se, like enough to where it's like, okay, well, this isn't that uncomfortable for me. So if it means struggling longer for me to have something greater down the line, I'll do it. So, and to get back to where how it kind of came into the shoes is once he saw what we were doing, like what I was making. He was like, "Oh, you're able to do this," and I just started making prototypes for him. I was doing this by hand at this time with this sewing awl. And if you look at your shoes and you look at how many stitches are on a shoe, let's just say a lot of needle pokes in my fingers while I was doing it, and a lot of struggle. I picked it up on the fly. I had never done something so detail oriented until he had proposed this idea, and I jumped right into it. And I just went from like 0 to 100 essentially. Like I went from like very rough, rugged work to one of the first pairs I did. I look back at it now and I'm like, this is actually still pretty acceptable. Like it wasn't really like, there isn't that like, there's a lot more I could do now, and I've learned a lot. But for what I did at that time, like
Pretty proud
I
of
was
it.
pretty proud of it.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing just 5 pairs prototypes for him, and the first buying client that reached out to me was actually Rick Ross. So,
What?
yeah. So once that happened, I was like, all right, I'm in on this. And then I
Yeah.
just, I was full fledged
Nice.
after that. So
What so obviously, you'll have requests from clients and stuff, but what keeps you inspired these days? Where do you find your drive, and what kind of gets you
Or what are
put you
your
in that creative
plans?
space?
Yeah.
yeah. So again, I think it is so vital. And I think that this plays a role, and this is kind of turn into like where, you guys come in with this, you coming from a whole different field and coming into this and then implementing little things that you've learned or different experience and different perspectives. I apply architecture ideas, engineering ideas, upholstery ideas. Like I'm gathering from so much. Like the world is my inspiration, and I'm pulling from all of these different. I mean, the accounts that I'll follow, like some of them are so random, but there's little bits that you're able to like pull from it because nothing's really original anymore. I mean, there are still some things, and I am very proud that there are a couple like first of that I've been able to complete and been able to check that off. But at the end of the day, it's like it's really being able to pull from different fields of art and different fields of design and being able to actually apply that in a different manner, whether it be on shoes, clothing, canvas work. There's so much that goes into that. And what kind of keeps me inspired today is there's a lot of designs out there that have little pieces, and I take bits and pieces from whether it be mentors that I follow online, like, or what I experience here. I'm very thankful to, be in this environment that we're in now to be able to, be like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. And again, it's that psychology, like the psychological mind of pulling from, oh, like that's interesting. How can that translate into
8 a.m. every day for you, probably.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's been it's been a great change of pace as well too, because before it was just like you just work in a cave essentially, like you're hibernating. Like I've been hibernating for years now because it takes so long to learn it, and all you do is consume and think about it. On my notes app, you could just scroll through. It's just so many ideas and stuff like that. That stuff that I'm going to be getting to, moving into this year. I'm kind of taking a different approach, but I pull from inspiration for everywhere, and I think that that's super vital. Like I said, I'm a big sports fan as well too.
Yeah.
Like I love
Got
sports.
the best jerseys ever.
Yeah,
All
I
the
appreciate
retro
that.
jerseys.
I appreciate that. We'll have to get you guguys some work whenever I get back into sewing jerseys, like because I want to make luxury jerseys.
Oh, nice.
And I will even look, tying this into sports. Like I think some of the best athletes are the guys that played soccer, hockey, football, basketball growing up. Now a lot of days, like in this day and age, that there's a lot of, okay, you're playing baseball, you're going to only focus on baseball. And I don't think that that's a great idea. I understand it, but I don't think it's a great idea. And you listen to a lot of guys that were multi-athletes growing up, they played a lot of different sports. So, and that all translate. You get some agility from basketball, you get the coordination from baseball, you get the ruggedness from football. There's a lot of different things. And again, it's just taking that idea and concept and applying it into art. And I really do think I have a different approach on creativity and art because of just what I'm interested in. Like, if I listed some of the things that I was interested, you probably wouldn't think the contrast would be, you know, art or design or sports or whatever it may be. So, you know, I really do take pride in that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you and Vinny shared the studio space, but what was the conversation like? How did you come into TPG? Where did that start, and how did that? How'd you get here?
Yeah. So what happened with that was, obviously Vinny does the shoes and as well, and he did his canvas work. And so when I met him, it was actually so funny. When I had met him, he was like, you know, explaining to me, because that was the first time we met. I follow him from afar. I pull from so much inspiration. I follow so many designers and artists and creatives, and just I think there's so much good content out there if you filter it. So I'd follow him from afar, and I knew he was in Pittsburgh. And you know, a part of my goal was when I returned, I wanted to, you know, get involved and be more around like-minded people, because that's something I battle with a lot. Is I was always the odd man out in what I do, how I think, and just my approach to things. Being a creative sometimes is very, very complicated. I can get along with most everybody, but I'm not gonna relate to most everybody at that level. That's gonna be, you know, vital for humans. Like, you know, we seek passion and you know, intimacy and understanding and exploring with people. But it was always tough for me. So when I came back, I met Vinny, and I was like, we were talking, and he was telling me about the studio, and he was like, man, I just, you know, he was opening up to me. He goes, I you know, had this company reach out, and I'm like kind of working with this they want me to do X, Y, and Z, and I just don't know. I don't get it. Like, he was so confused. It was so funny. And, you know, he was explaining this to me, and I was like, oh, and again, my thought process on it was like, oh, this is another situation where you get, you know, they're blowing smoke, you know, and I didn't say that because, you know, obviously I had no idea the situation, but in my brain, I automatically attributed that to, oh, it's probably one of these situations where, you know, it's somebody's just trying to take advantage or whatever. And he relates to this as well too. Like, him and I share a lot of like experience in the sense that you get promised the world all the time, especially when people see what you can do. And if you have a unique skill, oh boy, they like, you know, they get excited about it. And I was like offering myself to a lot of these people, like, because I knew it was experience, it was resume builder. So I was even open to it, and you still get screwed over sometimes. But he had mentioned me all that. I was like, you know, I don't know what to do with this. And he's like, I'm just kind of playing it by ear. I'm going to, you know, do my work with them. And so we had ended up getting to the studio together, working, and I was watching from afar, like, and, you know, he would kind of update me with, you know, what was going on throughout the time. And, you know, things seemed interesting. And then he was like, you got to meet Brian, like, because what he loves shoes, and he, you know, he's going to love what you do, especially like, you know, my thing is of late is deconstructing high-end luxury bags and then resewing them back together to look factory and look like they came out of the shop. And they were like, he loves, you know, some of that stuff, and he, you know, we think that, you know, he would be really interested in it. And he ended up DMing me, Brian, the one day, and was just like asking me about, you know, he wanted me to come to the office and just meet. You know how Brian is. Brian's, you know, very welcoming, and this is like his home, and he lets people in. And obviously you have to have that stamp of approval, and I do thank Vinny for that stamping of approval, where at least, you know, I'm good enough to at least visit here. Because again, like, Vinny and I were like, we're fairly new to each other. Like, we weren't able to spend as much time in the studio as we wanted to, and that was what was kind of unfortunate for us, and what I believe influenced coming here as well too. Because him and I had a lot of ideas for like, what we can do. Because around here, as far as what I do, I'm really the only one I know of that does it. You could go out to California and Florida, and you'll find a couple people and stuff. But in Pittsburgh, PA, I'm definitely the only guy doing this that I know of.
So you guys weren't just going to be sharing a space. You guys were going to be collaborating on.
Yeah, that was the goal. Yeah,
Gotcha.
that was the goal. We had ideas. I mean, because obviously, like, the idea of because like I said, I also paint as well too. So like there could be painting projects we could do. There could be me sewing a project and him painting over top of it. There's a lot of overlap, and I also didn't want to like be the guy doing everything. So like the idea of being like, oh, there's not only a competent person in what I do, but also somebody that's driven, and finding drive is very complicated. I mean, we all know that. But I was like, oh, it'd be so great to be able to create a project, be able to just confidently give it to him. I know he's good at what he does. This could be awesome. We could really come up with cool, unique stuff. And we're in Pittsburgh, and like we could essentially like revolutionize what can be offered as far as art, design, fashion, and then that spurs into like giving back to the community. Yeah, exactly. And you know, so he was like, you got to come check it out. Brian had reached out. He was like, come check out the office. And you know, I'd met him, and I think we hit it off pretty well. He really liked what I did, and I had told him, I was like, you know, kind of what I'm explaining to you today is like, I don't want you to look at me as like a one-way person. Like, this is the only way I see things. I only do fashion. I'm only an artist or whatever. Like, I was like, this is an additional asset. Like, this is something that's great for giving gifts. This is great for branding. Like, this is unique. This is something that you're not going to find elsewhere. You know, working with a high-end client and you want to get them something nice. What do you get somebody that has everything?
Yeah. Something they don't have.
Exactly. And that was like super important to me, where I was like, I don't want to be boxed in as this is all I do. Because I don't know where, you know, I would love to be creative for the rest of my life, but creative problem solving is big too. And like, you know, I come from a background of business psychology. You know, I didn't know I was going to be doing what I do full time, you know, doing that now. And I was like, I just want to implement those different skills. But being around somebody like Brian and the team that we have here is just vital for that growth, because I needed to be more like around like-minded people. And for the first time, like you guys are literally watching the everyday, like this past however many I've been here, maybe like 2-3 months now, something like that. You guys are watching every day is like a new day that I've been around somebody that like I wasn't before. You know what I mean? Like before this, it was just me. There was nobody else. Like it was an incredibly troubling time for the past, like it could go back to almost a decade, where it's like, you know, just planting that seed a long time ago, but like there's so much growth. And it's the idea of the bamboo concept, where it's like there's so much years of just growing underground until it finally, you know, sprouts upwards. And I spent a lot of time on those roots, like so when I meet somebody like Brian, or I meet some of the clients that I've dealt with, like some of the clients I've dealt with where you know, I've made stuff for, very, very proud of. I never would have thought, and I'm confident to give them a product and be like, they're gonna love this, you know, even somebody that has everything. So
you've done such a really good job, a good job of articulating your history and your past and the road that it's not been smooth. It's not been up and down and going all these different avenues. But what do you have to say to people that are in your boat now? Whether, doesn't matter what type of artist they are, but you know, sometimes questioning whether it's something that they want to do, or is this for me, or is this getting too challenging? Am I wasting my time? Like, what would be some advice that you would give?
Yeah, so this applies to all things. You know, like I've said a couple of times here, is like there's really no difference in the raw fundamentals of business, art, pursuing anything. You want to go be an athlete, you want to be a singer, a dancer, you know, whatever. They all come down to the core fundamentals of relentlessness. Like there's going to be, and if you don't have those trials and tribulations, most of the time it wasn't earned, or you hit the 1 in billion jackpot, which great for you, you know, but there's so many lessons that you could learn in what going through those hardships that you can get from that. And I'm thankful for that, and I'm still in them now. Like I'll be very transparent. Like things are still not easy. I'm very happy that for the first time in my life, in all 28 years of my existence, I am seeing that there is some sort of light in this tunnel that I'm in. There's some sort. Like I finally am going into this new year with like even the slightest bit of direction. Like obviously when I came here, there was no like, oh, this is what you're gonna do, X, Y, and Z, and that's everybody's story here. You'll hear on all the Perks and Paving. Everybody's like, I came in here, but that's what's so great about Brian and this culture that, you know, we're all taking part in building here, because I relate in that thought, and I'm so thankful to be around like I knew I wasn't a crazy person, and I knew I wasn't that unique. Like I knew, yes, unique to the the average crowd of people, which you want to strive to be a little bit above the average crowd. But the ideas of like taking risks on something like that and bringing in maybe this guy that doesn't make so much sense, and but it will in the future. And I was so thankful for that. And getting on to like what would I tell people is you're gonna have to work. Like you're going to have to put in tons of hours. This isn't a movie either. There's no camera crew. It's always so fun to watch a movie and you're watching that 2-minute cutscene of and you're seeing them work and you're like, this is so inspirational. And it's like, that's not behind me. I've looked. I've I've had nights where I would because I would be staying at my dad's house when I was first working, and he would see my light on while he was going to work in the morning, like all the time. Like this was like a common thing. Mm-hmm. He's like, I always see your light on, like even when I'm going to work at 5, 6, 7 in the morning. So many all-nighters, so much loneliness, so much going out isn't a thing. Mm-hmm. I think last year, I went out a little less than 5 times all last year. And I was dragging myself to go out. And one of the times is actually to go to a Penguin game with Brian. So that one's a good one. Everything else is nonsense. I don't approve. That's just, you're gonna do. And if you want to be different, you want to be unique, you want to, be someone, you're gonna have to go through like those hours. And nobody really knows. And to an extent, people don't. The care is hard. It's hard to because everybody's walking around with their own stuff. Yeah. For them to be like, oh, and that's why you got to be so thankful for the ones that do go out on the limb for you. But nobody's gonna just show up into your studio and be like, hey, here's success. Here's just all the money you've been looking for. Right. Yeah. And it just doesn't happen. So it was a lot of that. But you're gonna put in a ton of work, but also be unique and be different. Watch the market and pivot. Obviously there's some things that work for a reason, but pull from these different things. I think it's so vital to pull from different stuff, and that's a lot of what the Perks and Paving is.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, even going back to before physical therapy or physical therapy school, I mean, I was, I've had a handful of unique jobs throughout my years. Yep. I was a parking lot attendant when I was in grad school. Yeah. I drove a bus when I was in grad school.
No way. That's crazy. That's so, I would have never guessed.
I was a promoter for a beer company. Wow. What else unique did I do? I worked at a pizza place all through high school. But regardless, those experiences, and yes, they have, those alone had nothing to do with physical therapy. And obviously physical therapy has nothing to do with what I do here. But all of those experiences come together to shape you into, a hardworking, understanding.
Yes.
How to talk to people.
How to talk to people. Yeah. I mean, all of those experiences are going to shape you into the person you want to become, and you're able to kind of pull from those to bring into your new career. So I think that's awesome that you did the same, and super excited for what the future holds for you here.
Yeah. Diversity is huge. Yeah. I think diversity is massive.
So last question for you.
Yep.
What does the next year for you look like? What are your goals and plans for 2024, and what do you hope to achieve here or outside of here?
Yeah, so like I said, I it's been very promising. Like just being like, it's just taking a little bit of weight off. Where it's like, okay, like I'm in an area with it's kind of one of those checks. Is I wanted to, one of the first checks was be around people that are like-minded. I am, so thankful that, to meet all of you here. I love everybody's story. This is such a cool place because when I left my last office job, I said, I am never coming back to an office. Look at me now, look at me now. But this is, you can't even say that this is an office. This is like a madhouse, fun house. But it gets work done. Like there's a reason why that this is successful. Yeah. So I love that. What my goals are is to continue to expand. I want to give a lot more attention to stuff I want to be doing, that I know in my heart that will be what takes me to the next level. I've always been a long-term thinker, and I've always been able to sacrifice in the short term for the long term. But what happens is you do that, and you'll still get caught up with projects, and then those projects take up the time that you're just trying to meet these deadlines, and you're playing this constant game of catch up. And it's going to take me to say no to things. That saying no for me is a hard thing, because not that I want to be a yes man. I'll call out things that I think need to happen or whatever, but when it's my call to action and I'm called to like, hey, I need this from you, or can you do this, I'm usually like saying yes, because I'm just so eager to prove myself. And it's something that I'm just trying to learn, that you have to be cautious of how, where, and who you give your energy to. I think it's amazing that, again, being in this environment, because when I first came here, I said, because I was originally just given a studio space here. Ryan was like, yeah, you could just have this big room in the back. I was like, okay, what do you want from me? Nothing. He's like, just show up. I was like, okay. Like, and, with me being myself, I was like, this isn't gonna be a one-way street. I was like, I don't care if you need me to empty the trash and get coffees. Like, I'm thankful for it, so whatever I can do. So then, as time progresses, pretty quickly there was a couple opening. It's like, I'm not trying to say like I came in here and saved the day or nothing, but there was some things that needed assistance, I guess. Yeah. And I was like, I'll do it. Yeah, no questions. Like I work with my hands. I didn't think I was going to be running podcasts with you guys, or the morning show, or editing some of the thumbnails and some of the more recent podcasts. So I had no expectations for that. But I was like, I'm here for it. But going into this year, it's going to be really expanding, doing things that I want to do. It's going to be more longevity. I want to focus on the content as well too, and look at where we're at. We're in a incredibly nice studio, with a team full of incredibly talented and like-minded media, centered people. And I think that that's going to be very exciting. So I really want to lean into that and just do stuff that's more fulfilling, because I know that's what's going to take it to the next level. Me repeating the same project over and over again does not get the attention from anybody. Not that I'm seeking attention, but I need to expand and grow, and I want to collaborate and work with big brands and, work with big names. I can't do that by just repeating the same project over and over again. So it's going to be, kind of putting me, in front of, instead of just making a decision based on pleasing somebody else or showing my willingness and readiness, it's going to be like, okay, I have a bit of a home base here now, and I feel comfortable in that, and I, want to gamble and bet on myself a little bit more and just show what I really can provide, because I honestly feel like I'm not even 20% of where I want to be, like as a designer, creative, and just as a person, and it's like as a whole. There's so much I want to learn and grow from it, and consuming even more knowledge. You ever step back to my studio, I'm constantly listening to podcasts, and it's not all just joking and fun ones. It's a lot of like self-development, business-minded, and being in a place where we provide. Brian is a role model to a lot of people, and myself as well. And I look at Brian as a role model. Not that I'm a role model. One day I'd like to help creatives, but I really want to get more get myself back a little bit, to be honest. Like that, and that's something I really haven't said out loud, especially on a podcast. Is like over the time of like putting all that work in, you lose like who you are. At one point I was like, I was always, and I was that through this time, but very outgoing, very social, love being around people. But when you spend so much time like isolated like that, it was kind of weird being here for the first couple months, because and I'm still kind of like remembering how to walk again. It's like it's serious, like, because there was like months where you don't speak to another person, like except for a gas station clerk, because you're just working. And it feels so nice to be around people like yourself and just everybody around here. So I'm very thankful for that. Going into the new year with what I believe is a team and a family, and it's very exciting. And I think that there's going to be a lot of personal and business development moving into this year. So very thankful and excited.
Gonna do big things here at TPG, right? Good stuff.
Yeah.
Want to take it home?
Yeah. Thank you guys again. That's the conclusion for this episode of Your Perks and Paving. As always, we come to you from Studio One, and you can find us on the One Team Media channel on YouTube as well. Thanks again for tuning in. We love you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.